put together today. Let's bring Lewis into the conversation for his signature feature. It's called Is That Ridiculous? And we start in Dallas. Hey, Lewis, if I were to say Dak Prescott is going to win MVP with C.D. Lamb and George Pickens as his receivers, does that seem ridiculous?
It does, you know, in totality, because of different moving parts that are going on here in Dallas now with the new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer. We know that he has familiarity with his football team, but now he's the head coach. Dak has to get all these weapons now on the same page, namely talking about George Pickens. I know George for his career, his average over 16 yards per reception, and CD is fantastic. There's just a lot that has to go right in order for him to have a winning season, which is kind of a prerequisite for being an MVP.
All right, this one I love.
Yeah.
If I were to say the Chargers are going to win the AFC West, not the Chiefs, is that ridiculous?
That's not ridiculous. I'll tell you what, the Chargers have had a hell of an offseason. This offensive line is massive now. The addition of Mekhi Becton, go along with Joe Alt on the right side. They can run the football. They drafted Marion Hampton. They have playmakers on the outside now on the perimeter. We know how Jim Harbaugh loves Justin Herbert, and Jesse Minter is going to be a head coach in another year or two. So they have a fantastic defense. Look out in the West. The West is tight.
Yeah, they're going to play such short games. It take like 2 hours and 20 minutes for them to play. Finally, if I said Shedeur Sanders is going to become the starting quarterback in Cleveland this year, is that ridiculous?
No, that's not ridiculous. And look, it's going to be incumbent upon this coaching staff to give him a path to really earn that. If they give him enough reps and he has enough opportunities and gets put in enough situations, I think his skill set is such that he can compete with anybody on that roster in the quarterback room. As a matter of fact, he can probably, just one for one, man for man, beat out anybody on that roster. It's going to be about opportunity, though. We all know this, so we'll see how they wind up giving him that opportunity.
Kmart, no one knows the AFC North like you know that division. What are you hearing the early returns on Shedeur and Cam?
Listen, in that building, there are people who believe Shedeur can 100% be the starter of this football team. You said it's incumbent upon the Browns to put him in a situation. It's also incumbent upon Shedeur to do the work, which at talking to people in that building, they have said he is soaking up everything like a sponge in the QB rooms, talking to Flacco, wanting to learn. And also, let's not forget Dillon Gabriel. We spent a lot of time talking about Shedeur, but Dillon Gabriel is a guy who's drafted in the third. One source said to me, he is everything you want in a quarterback. He's just small. If he were a little taller, a lot of people would be looking at Dillon Gabriel a little differently. At least that's how they feel in their building. So they have a very interesting quarterback situation, and Shedeur has a path.
What is your sense, Peter?
Well, Kimberly was actually there in the spring, which I respect, and you had a feel for that. I am watching from afar and also texting people there that he has been everything you can ask for in a young quarterback coming in as a fifth-round pick. I also know it's a huge uphill climb to expect a fifth-round pick to get the same reps as a Joe Flacco or a Kenny Pickett, or even that guy in front of him, Dillon Gabriel. I thought Mike Tannenbaum made a great point on Monday on this show saying, hey, look, as much as the clock is not on him, it is kind of still on all these quarterbacks in that they have the Jacksonville pick next year in the first round, and they have their own pick in the first round. And you already start thinking about 2026, this rich quarterback draft. You say, okay, well, you've got time to prove it in training camp, but you're going to have to see and prove to those coaches that you're the guy moving forward if you're going to tell them that they can't draft a quarterback in the first round with those two picks.
You know what's interesting about that? Like, I understand, like, personnel people and fans always get enamored about what's next down the road. When we're talking about draft picks and potential guys coming out next year, like, people are now sitting there going, hey, man, maybe we can get Drew Allen from Penn State, and he would be the answer. He would be the one. How about just focus on the present and trying to, like, develop some of the guys that you have on your roster right now? Shedeur Sanders, we've all watched him play football. We all know kind of what happened in the draft. We all know about the stories. We also know about how efficient this kid was as a football player on the football field. We know how good Dillon Gabriel looked at Oregon. We know how good he looked at Oklahoma. I saw him play multiple times there. Just focus on that. If it comes to the point where you then have to, like, go ahead and lean on that draft capital you have next year and maybe a favorable draft position, then address it then. I just hate when the conversation switches like that.
Fifth round pick, they had zero investment. They have their names are not on this. If we took them as a value, if it was a first or second round pick, that's my guy.
Yeah.
I want to see this one.
Yeah.
So the sense I get in that building is something catastrophic, crazy would have to happen for Shedeur not to be on this roster. They believe in the talent, but again, and so far, I was there rookie camp. He said to me, I am not here to prove anybody wrong. I just have to prove myself right. It is on him to do the work and prove that he should be in the mix.
The world is a funny place. A year ago, we'd be having conversations like, look, if the season goes really badly next year, you can draft Shedeur Sanders. Here they are. They drafted Shedeur Sanders. Be careful what you wish for. He's going to be the starting. And so let's do big number, big question with Louis Riddick and Sir Paul Feinbaum, who rejoins us. ESPN's analytics department has released our football power index, our numbers, our projections. And Texas is favored to win its first national championship since 2005. That 24% chance, according to the All-State Playoff Predictor, is the best of any team in the country. Sir Paul, I will start with you. Is Texas, in your mind, the favorite to win the national championship this coming year?
Absolutely, Greeny. They have Arch Manning, in case you have not gotten that email from the front office, and he is expected to be much better than Quinn Ewers. I was not that impressed with Ewers last year. I think Arch Manning, had he come in the Cotton Bowl, may have had a better shot and maybe even beaten Ohio State, but he is going to be the leader of this team. They reloaded in the portal, Greeny, to the tune of many millions and millions of dollars, and I think Texas, other than having to go to Ohio State week 1, is in great shape.
Look, this is all about Arch, it seems to me, right? And Louis, you are not only our draft evaluator, but you also do all these college games. Is he going to be the best quarterback in the country this year?
You know what? It remains to be seen. Look, I love Sharpe to death. I talked to him before the draft, and he has a lot of faith in this young man. There's no question about it. He has all the skills. He's got tremendous athleticism in terms of all scheduled plays. Here's the thing that worries me about Texas a little bit, okay? The offensive line took a hit, okay? The wide receiver core, top 3 guys, gone. All right, on the defensive side, you lose a lockdown corner, you lose some pass rushers. There's a lot. Look, there's a lot of retooling that needs to go on here, and I understand in college football now, especially with NIL and the transfer portal, you can reshape your team in an instant. And Texas is going to have to do that. They are going to be going up against some teams this year that, quite honestly, I think in some of the more critical areas, may be even stronger than they are. Okay?
Look at the opener, Louis. Look at the opener.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty darn good football team right there.
At Ohio State.
Look, they have some questions to answer as far as what's going to happen at quarterback with them. But this is a football team that can reload with the best of them as well, and they can utilize the transfer portal as well as anyone, as they showed you last year.
Open at Ohio State in August, and they wind up at Georgia in November. The next big number is Alabama, which is given a 66% chance to make the playoff, according to our predictor. That's the 4th best of any team, that after they missed the playoff for the 3rd time in 11 seasons last year. Paul, I guess the best way I can frame the question is just how grumbly are the callers to the Paul Feinbaum show about Bama coming up?
They were not happy with the end of last season, and Kalen DeBoer, they believe right this second is going to get them to the playoffs. But the problem is the shadow of Nick Saban. Greeny, I was at an event 2 weeks ago in Birmingham that DeBoer and Nick Saban were both playing golf at this Pro-Am. And DeBoer looked like a Lily Putin compared to Nick Saban. He sucked all the oxygen out of the room in interviews and everything. And as long as Nick Saban is around, Kalen DeBoer will be compared to him, and it won't be a good look.
Yeah, look, being the guy who follows the guy is a tough lot in life. But you were saying he's sending some good-looking guys off the bus every week, right?
He absolutely is. Look, I think he has arguably the strongest offensive and defensive lines in college football this year. And I can tell you this, when doing these games and going onto these campuses and watching these practices and all, when the rubber meets the road, that is the difference maker in college football. How do your offensive and defensive lines play? Just like at every level of football. And Bama's matches up as well as anyone's across the country. Look, they have